I never know how to open these episodes, but I thought up something earlier before I was about to start recording this particular episode on an opening. So just to be random for a minute, you ever notice how all the bad wrestlers, in case you don't get it, there's like two bad wrestlers, and I mean they're both from Canada, and only one of them has the initials KO. Wait, all of them have the initials KO. Oh, wait a minute. I bet Kenny Omega's from Florida. He's not from Canada. Hang on, let me Google something really quick. Just stick with me. I promise this won't take too long. I'll be on my phone Googling something. Wait, he is from Canada. Oh man, now I just shot myself in the foot saying and where I'm coming from. Anyway, welcome to the only podcast that has 3 5-star reviews. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I just received an email. I don't know why it says that I just received this. It says that the review was posted on August the 25th of this year. So why did I just receive it now? I don't know. You know, it's kind of like, oh, it will just show it whenever it's, convenient for you. Which, I mean, it wasn't convenient for me, but whenever they think, rather, it's convenient for me. The title of it goes, has me on the edge of my seat, and this guy says, I love it. Every week this guy is always calling wrestling the way it should be. It's got style, and it's got grit, and apparently he don't know what punctuations are. That's okay. He's so entertaining. He left me a 5-star review, and the username is boy1032189. What are you giving your phone number, my guy? Well, anyway, this week we looked at Googled Kenny Omega, where he's from. It popped up his full name, and it said that his birthday is actually on the 16th, which will be tomorrow. Well, today's the 14th, technically, because this is always recorded like the Friday before the Saturday that it goes up. So technically, whenever you're listening to this, it will be, tomorrow. So think of this as a future. Me telling you what's going to happen in the future is Kenny Omega is going to turn, I think, 35. It's hard to believe that he might be a little bit older than that. I don't know. I just Googled it, but I didn't look at his age. I just looked at, I think they said he was born in 83. I don't think that makes him 30, but I mean, I could be wrong. I don't feel like doing math right now. This is not the mathematics podcast show. This week, we looked at Saturday night's main event. And boy, have I got some stories, or at least one story, rather, in particular, that I plan. And it's a true story, don't worry. I'm not making crap up as I go. I'm not saying, hey, look at this story that just happened and breaking news. And, oh yeah, I forgot to do something, like always, because I'm a moron. Hello everyone, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mocha, in case you didn't know. And if your parents didn't name you as graciously as they named me, Mocha, and no, I'm not French, and no, I'm not homosexual, but, if you're into that, then, who am I to judge your lifestyle? I claim to be into witchcraft, and I claim to be a witch. So who's to blame me for blaming you for not living your life the way that I suggested that you live it, or the way that I live my life? I'm not here to judge anybody based on how they live their lives, is what I'm trying to say. And you shouldn't blame me for living my life the way that I choose to live my life. But nonetheless, this is a topic for another day, I guess. It's just a different discussion. Witchcraft and who's gay and who's not. What? Who said that? I didn't. Sheesh. But we open the show with a few. It's almost like everybody has a one-liner. Everybody gets to say their piece within 10 seconds or less. And on this episode of WWE TV, I didn't write down a date, but it's, if I remember correctly, it's March 18th. Unless I did, and I'm just not. No. There's the James Ellsworth AJ Styles match that we looked at last week. And JBL calling James Ellsworth a slug that, somehow crawled out of water. So, that makes 3, by the way, for those of you keeping track at home. That makes 3 5-star reviews that I've gotten. And I'm just going to go ahead and, before we go any further and address the whole Twitter situation. Yes, my Twitter was banned or suspended, whatever. I don't know what kind of bull crap they're trying to pull. Maybe it's because I'm into witchcraft and they don't like that on Twitter. But I never publicly said that on Twitter, by the way. And I don't really know why my Twitter was suspended. Like, they didn't even give me, like, a warning. Like, sometimes they'll just limit everything. And by limit, I mean they would say something to the effect of, hey, we noticed some strange activity on your account. We're going to go ahead and lock it. And you can verify your phone number in order to get back into your account. So they didn't even do that for me. Or they didn't send me an email. Can you please, stop doing what it is that you're doing that's in violation of, code 305 over on Twitter TOS, terms of service or whatever. Like, they didn't give me that. Strange thing too, a friend of mine who I've been trying to get to start his own podcast, because he's also a wrestling influencer, but for some reason he doesn't want to, or he feels like it's beneath him, or, maybe he wouldn't have the time, or for that matter, is a whole big thing wherever he's like, nah, man, that's your thing. That's something that you do every week. And then I'm like, yeah, but we could support each other. And maybe I could be on your show. You could be on my show. I could scratch your back. You could scratch mine. Bada bing, bada bang. You could be making some money. And then I try to convince him every day. I'm like, you get... And then I'm like, what are you... what's your motivation in life, kid? Anyway, his Twitter got suspended too, which is strange. And then I go over, like, we were on lunch, right? Or break before, or after lunch, rather. And he has to stay there until 4, and I was about to clock out because it was like 3:07, 10 minutes after 3 o'clock. And I was supposed to be out of there by 3 o'clock. But anyway, I went ahead and then I looked on his phone, and then he's like, hey, watch this kid, get punched out by this adult. And I'm like, no wonder they banned your account. But the strange thing is, they banned both of our accounts, like, within the same time frame. Mine got banned the night of my day off, which was on Tuesday, and then I wake up Wednesday morning, and he's like, my Twitter got banned. And I'm like, okay. Why are you telling me? I didn't do anything to it. But anyway, everybody on this show here, sorry for being a little bit random here, but, I got a little bit on my mind. I got stuff to do, and I've been drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak. I'm not actually drinking any Kool-Aid. It's hard being a 5-star podcaster. And, everybody on this show to start got like this, almost like 7-second window to come out and then say, tonight I will be teaming with. And then, Triple H looks around, and then John Cena's hand comes out of nowhere, and then he says, he's teaming with me. And then he goes, isn't that right, game? And then he's like, and I don't like it. And then they cut to JBL, who for whatever reason has a list in his hand, and he's got like a stepdad mustache. One of those go like above the lip and there's barely any hair. And he rips it off and he goes, ow. And he says, I made a list of all the bad things I've done in my life, and I'm trying to atone for them. I'm assuming it's supposed to be a parody of NBC's hit new show, which at that time, 2006, in case you don't know, must have been My Name is Earl. Which, I don't know if it was their hit new show or anything, but I do know that people liked it. I don't know if critics liked it. But anyway, he said that he made a list of all the bad things that he's done in his life. And he goes number 108 or something, 109, beat Steve Austin in a beer drinking contest. And I'm like, okay, good luck to you. And that's apparently what he's going to be tonight. And more on that later, because that beer drinking contest is where that story comes in that I was yapping about earlier. And everybody gets like this 7-second window wherever they're like, tonight I face off against Shane McMahon in a street fight. And then it was like, okay, that's interesting, clever, and yet interesting. So then the bell rings, and we go down to ringside, where we get the following contest is scheduled for one fall, and it will feature the Raw WrestleMania main event facing off against the SmackDown WrestleMania main event for the first time ever. And I'm just like, okay, you already sold me, So, but they kind of goofed it, I mean, that's just my opinion. They goofed it. I mean, let's be honest. Because at this point in time, it was WrestleMania 22. WrestleMania 22 was big time. For those of you who don't, WrestleMania 21 was Hollywood, wherever they just went Hollywood. I guess it was the first time that they went to California. No, it wasn't. Hollywood, California. Yep. But WrestleMania 16 was California, right? Hollywood, yes. WrestleMania 16, otherwise known as WrestleMania 2000, because it took place in the year 2000, they were in Anaheim, California. So I'm not really sure why they're acting like that they've never been to California before after going there, But anyway, WrestleMania 22 was, every WrestleMania, in case you don't know, had like a subtitle to it, like 22 was big time, 23 was God damn it, billionaire versus billionaire, I guess you could say. And at the time, WrestleMania 23, funny story, funny story. So WrestleMania 23 rolls around, right? And I know it sounds like that I'm rambling and I'm trying not to get to the match or whatever. This is more important than this little wrestling match here. For the time being, at least. WrestleMania 23 rolls around, and I can't believe I'm so stupid as a kid, because the loser of the match, the main event match at WrestleMania 23, like I said, it was hair versus hair, and it was the battle of the billionaires. Of course, Donald Trump versus Vince McMahon, each being proxied by one superstar, Umaga being the proxy for Vince McMahon, and of course Bobby Lashley being the proxy for Donald Trump, if I remember correctly. And Umaga ends up losing, Lashley ends up winning, and McMahon ends up getting his head shaved. See, here's why I'm stupid. Because if I was smart, I would know that Donald Trump doesn't have hair. So I would have automatically known via the process of elimination that if they were going for a billionaire hair versus hair match, that McMahon was going to lose, and that, like, why would McMahon sign up for a match that he knows that he can't win, That's how much faith I had in Umaga that he was going to be able to beat Bobby Lashley as a child. But I'm stupid, so, It would have made less sense if it was hair versus hair, Umaga versus Bobby Lashley, simply because Umaga's the only one who has hair. So Bobby Lashley can't be shaved if he's already, bald. By default, you would already know who is going to win. But anyway, back to this match. Despite my childhood stupidity, it's the Raw WrestleMania main event versus the SmackDown WrestleMania main event. It's a 2-on-3 handicap match where Triple H and John Cena being your WWE champion at this time, versus Kurt Angle, your World Heavyweight champion and your SmackDown champion, Rey Mysterio and Randy Orton. So the closing of the match is a little confusing on the finish, but Triple H puts Cena down with a pedigree, then he puts Orton over Cena as he begins to walk out of the arena. And no, that wasn't supposed to rhyme, but I guess it works. Anyway, he's starting to walk up the ramp whenever Rey Mysterio, from out of nowhere, for whatever reason, not to steal Randy Orton's thunder from out of nowhere, but Rey Mysterio almost suddenly breaks up the pin. Why? Your teammate was about to win the match, and you just broke it up. For whatever reason, Rey Mysterio didn't want to, quote, win like that. He wanted to win, but he wanted to win in an honorable way. Not because Triple H had it with his tag team partner and decided it was a good idea to just plant him in the middle of the ring and then just leave him for dead. No, he wanted to win, but he didn't want to be like, hey, Triple H handed us that victory. He practically knocked John Cena on John Cena's ass. And whenever Triple H put Orton over top of Cena and then just tried to leave like that, Ray stops the count at 2, and Randy Orton hits an RKO on Kurt Angle. Like, and it wasn't by accident, by the way. He was just responding to Angle about to put him in a German suplex of sorts, because he was grabbing his waist. So it was some good wrestling, but rather confusing finish and a rather confusing story. So I'm looking for the rating that I gave it, even though I know that. Oh, okay, here it is. 2.5 out of 5 stars. Most definitely 2.5 out of 5 stars. So there was some good wrestling, some rather confusing storytelling, and I can see why they did what they did, seeing as though that. And John Cena ended up winning in the end because everyone on Team SmackDown couldn't keep any chemistry together. Triple H was running up the ramp like a scolded dog because he knew, I don't want no part of that. I can't team up with John Cena. And that would further progress John Cena into the spotlight. What's really confusing to me is I remember John Cena not being the champion. I remember it being Triple H being the champion, and Triple H being the defending champion, facing off against John Cena. Perhaps a Mandela effect of sorts, but I don't remember John Cena having the title coming in. I remember him being the underdog, of sorts. Triple H had the title, and he reigned supreme as, quote, the King of Kings. Perhaps they had a match before Wrestlemaina that would give Triple H the championship and make John Cena be painted as more of an underdog. Or perhaps this was the start of John Cena's 2 to 3 year reign as WWE champion, despite the fact that, people before John Cena have held the title for longer than that. If I remember correctly, I remember hearing something about... Oh man, what's this guy's... the Stallion, or the, the Stallion Italian. Oh man, I can't think of his name. Bruno Sammartino, maybe. Held the title for 1,750 days or something. 3,500 days or something of that nature, some unremarkable number that he held the title for until Hulk Hogan beat him. And that's quite impressive for John Cena to hold the title for 2 or 3 years, but whenever you had people like that, or go back to my first episode wherever I talked about Frank Gotch, who held the championship for well over 6 or 7 years, but that was before WWE even existed. A lot of people maybe don't even know who Frank Gotch is, but that was sort of a catch-as-can-catch style of professional wrestling. I'm not even sure why I'm going off the rails about it, but it's one for the books to really remember. If you're going to say, hey, look at this young, new, spry guy that we've got here, and look at all of his credentials, and he's held the championship for 375 days. Ooh. And that's impressive, but what's he got against someone like Frank Gotch or Vern Gagne or these people that no one else remembers except, me or someone who's done their reading. I could see this done better, especially if one side was all heels and the other was all faces. So if it wasn't, heel Triple H and face John Cena versus heel Kurt Angle, face Rey Mysterio, and heel Randy Orton, then yes, I could see this done extremely better. But it's so stupid. So Hulk Hogan inducts Mean Gene Okerlund into the Hall of Fame, and that's interesting because years later, whenever Mean Gene would pass away, Hulk Hogan was one of the first people in the ring, and they didn't bring it up at the time. They didn't bring this up at the time, but whenever Mean Gene passed away, they didn't really bring up this at the time. When he did pass away, though, Hogan was in the ring, and he took off his sunglasses. And whenever he took off his sunglasses, it revealed that his eyes were wet with tears. And then he just looks down and looks up, and then he kind of gives a heart-filled speech about, Mean Gene Okerlund. And he talks about what Mean Gene's going to do whenever he sees him at those pearly gates. Something of that nature. I'm sure his entire live speech is probably online somewhere. I do apologize for that mute that I just did. So sorry for that lapse of silence. Someone was upstairs making a lot of noise, and now they came downstairs. I really wish that I lived alone like I used to, but it's okay. Booker T getting his leg looked at by a doctor because he claims that he broke or hurt something while warming up or stretching, getting ready for his match. So earlier on in the night, there was supposed to be a match, or later on in the night rather, there was supposed to be a match between the Booker T, holy crap, between Booker T and the Boogeyman. But Booker T, the five-time WCW champion, you guys thought that I was going to do it actually 5 times, had enough, basically, of the Boogeyman. And this is more or less just a grudge match. It's not really got any championships on the line. It's got really nothing to do with any sort of primal story that's being told. It's just more or less like, hey, Booker T, I don't like you, and I know that you don't like me. So I say we get in the ring, and we fight. Even though Boogeyman never talked, he just laughed. I'm the Boogeyman, and I'm coming to get you. I would imagine that gave kids nightmares, especially whenever WWE's TV-14, and then they would always have the Boogeyman eating the worms. And as he's walking out, though, of the doctor's office, Booker T and his wife Charmel got this look on their face, and it's one of those aha, I got you looks, nobody's looking, so now I can show you my quote true colors. And then you should see the look. I mean, it was just a smile that came over Booker T's face. And then all of a sudden, Charmel, of course, she just goes, "Oh, baby, be careful on the leg." And then he just goes, "Ow!" Like a cartoon scream that Tom the cat from Tom and Jerry would always let out whenever he gets hit with a brick or something. Just ow! It was kind of funny. But he's overselling the fact that, oh man, ow, my leg hurts. Oh, doctor, I need you to look at it. And then he's like, oh, but we can't look at it until I can get an MRI. The doctor must have been in on it too, because he was like, I need an MRI. And then he tells Booker T to go across the road to the hospital, the medical facility, and get me an MRI, and then I'll know whether or not you're cleared to compete tonight or not. And Booker T and his wife Charmel will catch up with them later, but they had no intentions of getting an MRI. What do you think that they are? This is Bonnie and Clyde? Why did I say that? Bonnie and Clyde never got an MRI. These are the dumbest similes or metaphors that I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, I'm trying to appeal to a younger generation, and I keep saying Bonnie and Clyde. Like, that's the best that I could come up with. Like, who am I, Tom and Jerry? What do you think this is? Is this like the Daffy Duck podcast right now? Did he say suffer and succotash, or was that Sylvester the cat? I forget. Anyway, you're just walking out, you see the smile on Booker T's face, and then it shows highlights from Raw 2 weeks ago. As we cut to our next scene, and our next scene happens to have Edge concertoing Mick Foley. Now Foley is a guest host on The Cutting Edge, which is Edge's TV, I wouldn't say TV show, but more or less he's Mick Foley and Edge. Edge has this talk show that he does once in a while, and it's called The Cutting Edge. And he doesn't do it all that often, but whenever he does do it, it's something rather special. You know, it's kind of like he does it, and then people are like, oh man, this guy, he really asks the hard-hitting questions, even though he doesn't. He mostly mocks his guests. Much like Chris Jericho, whenever he had a talk show back on WWE television 2, or I shouldn't say 2, I should say as well, because I'm not talking about the number 2. But anyway, Jericho would constantly ridicule his guests, and then he would talk about how inferior they are compared to him, because he is the Ayatollah of rock and rolla, or the fact that he is the king of the world, baby, or the fact that, I mean, that's not facts. What I mean, well, yeah, those are pure facts. You can't dispute the fact that Chris Jericho isn't the king of the world, and you also can't dispute the fact that Kevin Owens having the same initials as someone as great as Kenny Omega and being from the same freaking place. They're both from Canada. What kind of bullshit is this? Can I sign a petition to make sure that the next time that somebody Googles Kenny Omega's hometown, they find out that he's from Florida? Because, this is a travesty. The same Canadian blood, that pumps into a 1 star out of the 5 stars at the most that I'm willing to give him. I'm sorry, all I can do is 1 hamburger bun out of, 5 hot dogs. That's what I think about Kevin Owens, and I know that I'm getting off topic, but that's not the point. The point is that Booker T thought that he had outsmarted Teddy Long. He thought for sure that there's no way that he's going to go across the street for an MRI. The point is that Mick Foley shows up as guest host a guest on the... I'm sleepy. A guest on the Cutting Edge, and whenever he does, he only ends up like fighting Edge, because Edge lays it down thick, like thick, like I don't like my women that way, but some people do. Edge basically says something along the lines of, "Oh, what, you people like Mick Foley? Why? Because he comes out here and he panders to you people here in Detroit? Because he comes out here and then he says, right here in Detroit, Michigan." And then he plays sock puppets, and he comes out here and then he'll dance. Dance. Look at me, I'm Mick Foley. Remember whenever I was relevant? Ooh, look at me, I can dance. But Mick Foley's having none of it. Or he'll come out and plug his useless endeavor, or his failed endeavor, as Edge puts it. Mick Foley has none of it, though. You hear the music, the clap along, and you would figure that he would come out dressed in all flannel, because he's Cactus Jack or something. One of the four faces of Foley, but the only face that comes out is Mick Foley, and they don't even announce him as Cactus Jack. Sell me on the image. Sell me on the fact that it's going to be Cactus Jack, the King of the Death match from 1999 versus Edge. I'm not really sure what to say about Edge at this point, other than the fact that he's, quote, perfect at WrestleMania. Now, getting to the, quote, perfect at WrestleMania. Was he undefeated before and after 06? Now, I know he was to win that match, because obviously it was a hardcore match, and that was the last time that they would use the word hardcore in a setting such as that, because of, it's a root word for something else. And they were moving their company in another direction a few years after. So this is probably something that they want you to forget about, maybe. Something that they wish that they could maybe expunge, or for that matter, even edit out the word hardcore, and edit out every voice clip of someone saying hardcore. But Lita says that Edge is undefeated at WrestleMania, and does she mean in one-on-one competition? Does she mean altogether? And she doesn't exactly say the word undefeated. They keep using the word perfect at WrestleMania. I'm perfect at WrestleMania. In my own experience, in order to be perfect at something, like, let's say fighting games, for instance, and I've played a lot of them. In order to win the round with a perfect, to get the announcer to say that, you have to win without being hit, without your health taking one smidgen of a, decrease, so to speak. So, if that's the case, is he saying that he's never been hit at WrestleMania? Or perhaps he's simply saying that he's undefeated without saying that he's undefeated, because he keeps saying perfect. He doesn't say, hey, I'm undefeated at WrestleMania, even though that's probably what he should say. But then again, you got The Undertaker, who's also undefeated at WrestleMania. And for that matter, does Lita mean to say that he's never lost in one-on-one competition? Because most of his matches have been nothing more than ladder matches, and I only remember him winning one of those, but I could be wrong, and I'm not willing to say, I remember him losing a lot of those, because I only remember him winning one of those. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it was WrestleMania 2000, the one that I just mentioned, WrestleMania 16 in Anaheim, California. And the only reason that I know that it takes place in Anaheim is because of that frickin' song that plays every time I go to look up highlights from it. California knows how to party. Yeah, whatever. Booker T Boogeyman spooks Booker T in his locker room by hanging upside down on a wall with worms in his mouth. So all of a sudden, Charmel thinks that she sees something in the mirror. And they're talking about how they're not going to get that MRI, Yeah, it was really clever of you to pretend like you had a leg injury. Yeah, I know. I was like, it hurts. Oh, God, the pain and the agony and the shin bone. Oh, God, and it's connected to the thigh bone. Oh, no, it hurts. So anyway, what ends up happening is basically they think that they've outsmarted Teddy Long, and they think for sure that there is no way that Teddy Long is going to make them wrestle. Make Booker T wrestle, rather. Because he's convinced them to get an MRI, which they don't get. But okay, sure, let's just drop that completely. I guess it was just an element to get them from one, room to another room so that they could move the show forward. Get an MRI. Wink, wink. Nod, nod. We don't really need an MRI. But Boogeyman spooks Booker T because Charmel says, "Hey, what's that over there?" And then he's like, "What are you talking about? What's what over where? I just got out the shower. Maybe that's all the steam on the window." And then she's like, "I don't think that's steam." All of a sudden, the red light comes on and the Boogeyman's music starts to play. And then all of a sudden, you see him just dangling from, like, a wall that's precariously placed there. It looks like it's even half a wall, not really a full, like, wall, because it's not really connected to anything. It's not the point. They run out like scared little girls, and then they're like, get him away. Oh no, he's got worms in his mouth. Keep him away from me. He's weird. Oh God. They run right past Teddy Long, and they run right past Carlito. And the whole time Booker T's trying to act like his leg's still giving him problems. And then we cut to a commercial, I'm assuming, because they kind of go dark. And then they come back. Whenever they come back, this is where that story that I was telling you guys about comes into play. Okay, so try to follow me on this one. JBL's music plays. He comes out, limo and all, and whenever he gets to the ring, and it looks like he's stalling. It looks like he's stalling for whatever reason. He gets to the ring. He starts talking about how Steve Austin's afraid of him, and how Steve Austin is... He spends a good 12-15 minutes talking, and I'm not going to spend a good 12-15 minutes talking about this segment in particular. At least I hope that I don't. He just goes on and on and on about how Steve Austin's afraid of him, and there's no way that Steve Austin can beat him in anything, let alone a beer drinking contest. How Detroit sucks so much that they've let their auto industry down, because they're losing jobs to China now. They're losing jobs to Japan. They're losing out to, because Detroit has like a factory, and I'm pretty sure it's like a Chevy factory or a Ford factory. But apparently Toyota is beating them in like sales or something. I could find nothing that proved JBL, wrong. So whenever I was doing research for this. Anyway, eventually, after JBL's done just giving Detroit hell, talking about their sports team and how much that they suck. I feel like this would have made more sense if he was in Texas. Now, I know that maybe raises a few eyebrows from some wrestling fans. They're like, wait, what? But isn't JBL from Texas? Yes, he is. But at this point in time, his whole persona was about... He came out, and whenever he would, the announcer would always say, now residing in New York City, or one part of New York or another. And whenever they would say that, I mean, The Miz did this too. Instead of being from Cleveland, Ohio, he said he was going to do what LeBron did, and he was going to move to Sacramento. And that's what he did. He started coming out saying stuff like, oh, you know, Cleveland sucks and all this and that. And Chris Benoit did the same thing, but he did it for a different reason. You see, Atlanta is extensively closer to Florida, which was where WWE's headquarters was at the time and still is. Well, I wouldn't say headquarters, more or less. It's just easier to work in Florida and drive from Atlanta to their main base there in Florida, rather than having to go to his hometown of Canada and then let him see his family for like 2 or 3 days and then drive all the way back, or fly rather, all the way back to Florida, work for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then fly all the way back to Canada. And then all the while you're driving to as many cities and trying to make appearances here and there and everywhere else. And it took a toll on him. So instead he just moved to Atlanta. That's a very long-winded explanation, I suppose. Anyway, I feel like that this speech that JBL gave, though, would have been better suited for somewhere not Detroit. Despite the fact that he made some pretty good points, maybe, probably. So the first time that I watched this, in 2006, I was 10 years old in 2004. So I was around 12 years old when I was watching this for the first time. And I remember my mom told me that I could stay up. Despite it being a Saturday night, she was very strict. But anyway, I remember my mom told me I could stay up, seeing as though there was wrestling on NBC channel. So NBC owns most of the major networks. Those of you who aren't aware, they have a contract with people like USA Network and stuff of that nature. So that's why the wrestling was on NBC in the first place. So I remember basically sitting down and being excited to watch a beer drinking contest between JBL, who at the time I didn't understand his gimmick at all, and my childhood hero, or at least one of them, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And Austin comes out in a truck. He's basically like, you know, hell yeah. He comes out and he's drinking some Steve Weiser and he's giving everybody the finger and he's doing typical Steve Austin things. And there's like this table in the ring, and JBL's in the ring, and JBL was about halfway through telling Detroit what he thought of their city. Whenever Steve Austin comes out, he goes to every corner. He gives them, you know, a good photo op to take a picture while he's in the corner, and he grabs a microphone and he gets to talking, and then the next thing you know, he says, oh, JBL, I didn't see you there. You sort of snuck up on me there. And then he's like, what do you mean I snuck up on you? And, you know, I was in the ring before you were. I was in the ring before you were, you old fart. But anyway, they start talking about how the beer drinking contest is going to work. The rules, according to JBL, are very simple. He's mapped like 50 beers or 25 beers or something, and he put them all out on this little table. And whenever he did, he made sure to put out all the beers. He says, okay, we're going to do this like this, back-to-back Western style. So basically it would have been Austin's back toward JBL's back, instead of looking each other in the eyes, trying to, down a few cold ones. And here's how this goes. The first time that I watched this, as soon as JBL said ready, and as soon as he tried to say set, it cut off. I'm not joking. So the next thing that I seen was like the typical TV, like red, white, green, blue, gray, almost like that please standing by or whatever. That's what I seen. Before this segment was over, and I didn't get to watch it until like 10 years later. This is like my third time seeing it, but that's not important. The first time that I ever watched this, I saw the standing by, and then all of a sudden, good evening. I'm whoever, and we're doing whatever. A local child just been kidnapped or something like that. Like this news anchor comes on, and she's dressed, awful formal, and for whatever reason, she just tells us that there's this missing little girl. By the time that wrestling comes back on, by the time that their news broadcast is over, and by the time that the lady says, we're now returning you to your regularly scheduled programmed, Steve Austin had already poured beer on JBL and took the table and flipped it over. And all I seen was that there was beer everywhere, and that Chris Benoit was backing away from the ring. And I remember being so mad. I mean, I'm sorry that there was some little girl that was taken. I really am. I feel as though that I've run the course of my podcast, and I've still got a few matches to go through. Oh man, yeah, maybe 2 matches. Yeah, but I remember being so mad about the fact that they interrupted wrestling. There was a reason that it came on NBC, and it was because the USA Network had already had something regularly scheduled for Saturday night, and the WWE programming, despite their contract being a lenient scheduled at the time, is what was in their contract. Oh man, I was mad. I don't remember anything about the little girl. They showed a picture, and it was like a little girl with like a rainbow in her hair, or one of those things that you put on babies' heads. Oh, I mean, I don't know why I'm getting upset even thinking about it now, but this, it's funny. It's funny now, but it's not later. Very moment is what people, NBC executives. Okay, so JBL says something. He says, this is the very moment in which that people, including NBC executives, have been waiting their entire lives for. So JBL just said that NBC executives and people who are watching all across the world have been waiting their entire lives for him and Steve Austin to have a beer drinking contest. They should have done this in Texas when JBL gives Detroit an earful. JBL talks about the U.S. Championship and guarantees he's beating Benoit at Wrestlemaina. Okay, yeah. So it's funny. the reason that JBL talks about the state of the country and stalls for so long is because Benoit, who's from Canada, just like the titular Kevin Owens, and the better, not the titular, but the better than Kevin Owens, Kenny Omega, the better of the two KOs, is also from Canada. But anyway, it's funny, the Canadian wrestler holds the United States Championship. Think about that for a minute. The Canadian wrestler holds the United States Championship. That's interesting, at least at this point in time, especially whenever the United States economy was in the hole. Victoria and Candice Michelle versus Trish Stratus and Mickie James. I gave this one 1 out of 5 stars. It's over as soon as it begins. And after it's over and after I think Mickie James wins, she practically just kicks Trish in the head. And after the match, Mickie kisses Trish on the cheek and kicks her in the head, then laughs loudly as she walks away. And then after that, she says on WWE.com that apparently, Trish, you broke my heart, and now I'm going to break you. So then we get a hype package for Mr. McMahon versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania. We get a hype package for Edge versus Mick Foley at WrestleMania in a hardcore match, which is the term that they would later put to bed. Casket match. Mark Henry will face off against The Undertaker. Benoit will face off against JBL, and it will be for the United States Championship. Booker T. Here's a match that was just made, apparently. Booker T will face off. I put Booker T. Wow. I put Booker T will face off against Booker T. Against the Boogeyman, is what that should say. Okay, Randy Orton versus Rey Mysterio versus champion Kurt Angle. John Cena, who is our champion, will face off against Triple H. And there's just one more match that I'm forgetting. I didn't write it down because I didn't feel like it needed to be wrote down. But holy crap. Big Show and Kane will face, who are the tag team champions, I do believe, will face off against, I think, Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch. That will be at the WrestleMania event. Then we get a word from Jim Ross, who says it's time for Mark Henry to come out. Mark Henry comes out. He says that Mark Henry is the strongest man in the world. And then he says, and to prove it, he deadlifted 903 pounds. We don't get to see that, but holy crap. Criminy. 903 pounds. Keep in mind, Mark Henry at this time must have been like 300 pounds himself. I mean, he was a big boy. I mean, they didn't say he's got the world's largest arms. They didn't say anything like that. They just said that he's the world's strongest man. But I guess strength will only get you so far. Mark Henry cost Undertaker the World Championship, so it shows a highlight from like last Friday on SmackDown, where or weeks ago from SmackDown. They don't exactly give you any sort of context, where the Undertaker faces off against our champion at this time, who was Kurt Angle. Mark Henry costs the Undertaker the match, basically by disqualifying him and beating him up while the match is still going on. Mark Henry said Undertaker is afraid of me, but I'm not afraid of him. And then we get our main event of the evening. Shawn Michaels versus Shane McMahon in a street fight. The bell rings twice, by the way. I know that I brought this up a few episodes ago, rather, in a match between, and it's a small nitpick, I suppose, but if the bell rings twice, the match should be over. So the camera pans to the entrance ramp, and as it does, the bell rings. And then the announcer, presumably Lillian Garcia, presents, all of the participants in said wrestling match. From San Antonio, Texas, Shawn Michaels. And then what happens is, as soon as Shane McMahon's music hits, Shawn Michaels guns it to the arena, or to the top of the stage, and then he just gets to wailing on Shane McMahon, just showing him absolutely no mercy. This one has a little bit... It hasn't aged well, especially if you're a wrestling fan and you don't like Vince McMahon because of what he did in Montreal or whatever. The whole Bret Hart Survivor Series 1997, I think it was, situation. Well, if you didn't like that, that's how this match ends too. It's supposed to be a street fight, but what basically ends up happening, I mean, it's a decent match. It's, all things considered, it's a decent match. With the help of Daddy, though, I'm going to use the word Daddy, and not in, those terms. Oh, Daddy, oh, slap me harder, Daddy, not like that. Except for maybe this one time. Oh, Daddy, slap me harder, Daddy. And what ends up happening is basically what you would expect. Shane McMahon puts Shawn Michaels in the sharpshooter, and Vince McMahon asks the timekeeper to ring the bell. He says, ring the bell, damn it. I said ring it. And then he starts ringing the bell, and then he prompts Lillian Garcia to say something along the lines of, your winner via submission, Shane McMahon. And they leave with the smiles on their face. So I know that I said it earlier, but I'm going to try to just tie it all up into a bow before we leave. And I know that I'd said it episodes prior. I think that the match that I'm referring to is the Shayna Baszler facing off against Ember Moon when that match took place, because that's exactly what happened too. The referee, or not the timekeeper, rang the bell twice before the event had even started. Excuse you, but whenever a bell is rang in a wrestling competition, the match should be over. Thank you all so much for joining me. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have this week. My name's been Mocha. You're not Mocha. You should be jealous. That is a wrap. And by the way, something else before I say it again. So, I also noticed that I screwed that up. I meant to bring that up in earlier episodes as well. So, Kenny Omega, I don't know what he says before the end of most of, if not all of his promos. promos for consistency reasons, he either says good night everybody or he says that's a wrap. So if he's not saying the thing that I'm saying, then I should just go back to saying you've been shenanigans. Because at this point, I'm just being original, and I'm trying not to rip him off, even though this entire time I've been trying to rip him off. And now that I say it out loud, I'm sitting here in my room, right, and I'm sweating bullets thinking about it. Good night, everybody, and that's a wrap.